Hello and welcome to Tommy Talks TV. I have one singular goal with this show, and that is to help you make smarter decisions so that you can have better relationships. I'd like to start again, like I usually like to do, by saying a very, very big thank you, massive thank you to all of you who have liked and shared and commented on the things that I share. I really, really appreciate it because you're helping us spread the message further faster. So thank you very much indeed. And I particularly want to give a shout out to those of you who follow me on YouTube. I'd really encourage you to click on the subscribe button and also the notifications button so that you don't miss anything that I share. So sometimes you might miss things if you're watching on Facebook, but if you're watching on YouTube and you click the notification button, then you'll never miss anything that I share. So thank you very much for that. Now, as you might know, last week I started talking about 12 questions that you need to ask yourself before you say I do. And I explained to us that, you see, who you marry is really, it's fundamental that you make the right decision about who you get to marry or who you choose to marry, because the person that you marry will affect the course and the quality of your life. It will affect the direction in which your life will head. It will affect how much you enjoy your life. So it's so crucial that you ask yourself the right questions, because when you ask the right questions, then you get insightful answers, and you will know that the main reason why I share all that I share on social media, or I share with you on whatever platform, or if I'm speaking in events, I'm all about helping you make the right decisions, helping you make smarter decisions so that you can have better relationships. And there's no better way to unlock your decision making capabilities than to ask yourself insightful questions, or ask yourself the right questions. So that's why I'm sharing these questions with you. So last week I shared 4 questions which you can ask yourself before you say I do. If you did not watch that episode, then I'd strongly encourage you to go back and watch that episode before you dive into today's episode. Today I'm going to start with the 5th question you need to ask yourself before you choose to marry someone, or before you say I do. And that question is this: do we trust each other? And I know for someone, it's like, suddenly you feel like something is, like a weight is sinking to the depths of your heart. But just hear me out here. It's really important, because trust is the bedrock of a stable marriage. There's no getting away from it. Without trust, there is no intimacy. Intimacy is impossible in an atmosphere where trust has been broken. You see, because the truth is this: trust cannot be demanded. It has to be earned. And before you bestow your trust on someone, before you choose to trust that person, they must demonstrate that they are worthy of that trust. And the same thing applies to you as well. So before someone can trust you, then you must demonstrate that you're trustworthy as well. And trust is so crucial in that whole thing of intimacy, because they're two sides of the same coin. When you trust, you're willing to be intimate, and when you're intimate, you're being intimate because you trust that person. So without that whole aspect of trust, it's difficult to be intimate in a relationship with someone. And that's supposed to be, your deepest relationship, and your most intimate relationship is supposed to be the marriage relationship. So trust is earned. It's not something that can be demanded. It is earned, but it can be lost in the fraction of a moment. And while broken trust can be rebuilt, I've seen people rebuild broken trust. Maybe there's been an issue in the family, there's been infidelity, or financial infidelity as well. That's a different type of infidelity. But over time, they've rebuilt that trust. So it can happen, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it's very, very testing to recover what has been lost. So it's really important that before you actually say I do to someone, you ask yourself, whether you actually trust that person and whether they trust you. And the thing is this: trust is built on truth. It's not built on a vacuum. It's built on truth. So when you constantly share with each other in truth, when you relate in truth, then that is what builds the trust in a relationship. But when deception enters a relationship, regardless of how small it is, it tampers with the very foundations of that relationship. And I want you to recognize that, because if you're tempted to tell a little so-called white lie, there are no white lies anyway. A lie is a lie is a lie. But you're tempted to tell some kind of lie, to your partner, because you feel you're protecting them from something, you don't want them to know something, or whatever. When you think about it, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're tampering with the relationship, or tampering with the foundations of that relationship. if your partner gives you cause to doubt their integrity when you are in a courtship, then you've got to realize that marriage is not going to solve that problem. Marriage will only magnify your distrust of the person that you're in a relationship with. So whatever you do, do not compromise on the element of trust in a relationship, because the last thing that you need is to get married to someone and then you're constantly feeling like you need to be on guard. And this is one area where I find it really, really challenging when I'm counseling couples, people who are married, a partner who they're married, and maybe they suddenly find that there's infidelity in their marriage. And a lot of times when you ask them the question, did you see the signs before you get married, majority of the time, I've got to be honest, majority of the time they say they saw the signs before they got married. So maybe the person was playing around, was not staying faithful to the relationship and all that. And then you ask yourself, if you couldn't trust them when you were courting them, what made you think that they will be trustworthy after you get married? Because marriage is not going to make a person trustworthy. Marriage is only going to make them more of who they are. So if you can't trust them in a relationship, then I don't see how you plan to trust them after you get married. So it's really fundamental that you ask yourself the trust question. Now, it's worth saying here that there are three different types of people when it comes to this whole thing of trust. There are people who are called high trust people. So high trust people are people who are, maybe you could say, too trusting. So because of that, they trust, they believe anything and everything that they are told, and because of that, they easily get hurt because they believe anything you say to them, they just swallow it hook, line, and sinker without checking. But you see, the thing is this: when you enter into a relationship, you've got to start on the basis of you trust, but then you also verify. That was famously said by Ronald Reagan, one of the former presidents of the United States. But you trust, but you verify, and when you do that, that's what makes you a mid-trust person. So you are not you're not lacking in trust, but at the same time, you take your time to make sure you're examining all the evidence, and you make sure that the evidence lines up with what that person is telling you. Because when you do that over and over again in a relationship, then you get to the point that once you're married, you can actually relax, because at that stage, that person has proved themselves to be trustworthy. But if before you get married to them, you just swallow everything they say to you, even though you're seeing the signs, you might be heading for the sort of thing that you don't want to experience in life and in marriage. So it's not the best to be just high trust. You need to be a mid-trust person. Low trust people are people who they find it very difficult to trust anyone. Maybe because of things that they've experienced in their past, maybe they've been hurt in their past, maybe they've been betrayed in their past. So because of that, they find it difficult to trust. So to them, a person is guilty until they're proven innocent. You see, but the thing is this: when someone is a low trust person, then being in a relationship with them can be extremely difficult and emotionally exhausting, because what that means is that they will constantly be reading meanings into everything that you do, everything that you say and all that. And I've seen cases like that. There was a couple that I counseled many years ago, I remember, where she married a man who was low trust, and I'm not quite sure why he was that way, but he was so low trust that he would not allow his wife to work. He would not allow her to go out unaccompanied. He was constantly calling her on her phone to check where she was, and then not only would he call her, then he would call her neighbors to check that she actually was at home when she said she was at home. If maybe she in church she had a chat with, she talked to a man or something, he would get so upset, he would lose his temper. So when you live with someone who is a low trust person, then you can begin to feel like you're in a prison, because they're constantly they're checking your social media, checking your phone, checking this, checking that. Low trust is a difficult place to be. And I understand that sometimes people get to that place because they've been hurt in the past, but the truth is this: it does not solve the problem of trust in a marriage. Because I always say to people, you've got to get to a point where you can actually allow them to be themselves in that relationship without having all those super vigilant behavior that makes it difficult for them to actually relax in the relationship with you, because mistrust is a very unhealthy footing for you to try to build a marriage. So it's important that you remember the scripture says in the book of 1 John chapter 4 and verse 18, it makes it very clear that fear and love do not cohabit. So it says there is no fear in love, because perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So if your relationship is driven by fear, maybe because of bad experiences that you've had that make it difficult for you to trust, then you really need to ask God to heal your heart, and seek for help, for maybe someone who can counsel you and walk through that journey with you, so that you get to a place where you learn how to trust again, so that you can enjoy the fruit of an intimate relationship with someone else. Well, I hope this has helped you. If this has helped you, then please leave me a message on Facebook, on Instagram, or YouTube, or wherever it is you're watching. And if you've got a question you would like me to answer, then head on over to tometalks.com/ask, and I'll answer your question next time. See you next time. Bye bye.